In modernity, we are told that the word myth is synonymous with the word false, that myth means a lie. But that definition is the result of a long campaign to disenchant our civilization. Because myth is actually a coded system for articulating truths that can't be articulated with basic human language. Human beings do not interface with reality through logic alone. Human beings interface with reality through story. Everyone, whether they admit it or not, views their life as a story. There are characters, enemies, heroes, boring episodes, exciting episodes, strange little omens you remember for no rational reason. You may not call it mythology, but your nervous system does. Our ancient ancestors knew this implicitly. They knew human beings had a kind of inner keenness, an ability to sense unseen forces. Today, we would call that intuition. Everyone knows the big five senses, right? Sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. But for most of human history, it was simply assumed that human beings had an underlying sensitivity to the invisible architecture around them. That's what we now call intuition. And then starting around the Enlightenment and accelerating through the industrial and scientific age, the West began to turn against that sense, primarily as an overreaction to institutional religion, which had begun to strangle the life-affirming spirit of the Western man. But the West overcorrected. Instead of disciplining bad religion, it began to distrust the entire symbolic imagination. Instead of cutting out superstition, it started amputating intuition. And from then on, if something cannot be measured, weighed, tested, or observed under a microscope, then we are simply told that it does not exist. We killed God, and with God, we too killed our own intuition. And the problem is that myth is how we articulated our intuitions. So if the modern priesthood wanted to sever man from his intuition, he had to degrade myth first. It had to reduce myth to archaic fiction of a bygone age. But that is not what myth is. Since not all, in fact I would argue not most intuitions can be articulated with plain empirical language, myth was a vital means of communication. It was a way of explaining the unseen interiors of the human mind, giving form to forces that everyone experiences but few people can define themselves. Mythology may not always be true in the literal and empirical sense, but it carries what many great thinkers have called hypertruths. The best way I could plainly articulate a hypertruth is something so foundational to the human condition, and perhaps even the nature of reality itself, that it is truer than your mother's love for you. A hypertruth is not always something factually literal, but it reveals something permanent, such as time is a reaper. That's not literally true. Time does not wear a cloak and carry a scythe. But as a description of being alive under time, it is truer than some sterile sentence about biological aging. The scientific sentence may be accurate, but the mythic image tells you what it feels like to exist in that reality.